The millionaire couldn't breathe when he saw her, his beloved, who vanished 10 years ago now barefoot, begging on the streets with 2 children by her side. But what truly shook him to his core was the undeniable detail he couldn't ignore. The twins had faces identical to his own. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories like this, and make sure to hit that like button if you want to see what happens next. Thatcher Harrington straightened, his Italian silk tie as he strode down Fifth Avenue, the September sun glinting off the polished glass of the skyscrapers surrounding him. At 41, he cut an imposing figure, tailored charcoal suit, salt and pepper temples, giving distinction to his otherwise dark hair, confident stride that parted the sea of pedestrians without conscious effort. Forbes had just named him one of the 40 under 40 to watch, and Harrington International was poised to announce a merger that would double its market value. By all outward measures, Thatcher had everything. Yet the hollowness in his chest had been his constant companion for a decade now. 10 years since Audra had vanished without a trace, without explanation. 10 years of wondering what he had done wrong, why the only woman who had ever truly known him had disappeared from his life as completely as if she'd never existed. "Mr. Harrington," his assistant's voice chirped through his earpiece. "Your mother called again. She's insisting on confirming your attendance at the charity gala next weekend." Thatcher suppressed a sigh. "Tell her I'll be there, Diana. The usual arrangement." "Of course, sir." "And Mr. Stevens from legal has the preliminary paperwork ready for the Nakamura deal when—" Thatcher stopped abruptly, causing a businessman behind him to nearly collide with his back. But Thatcher didn't notice. He couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to a single point across the busy street. That profile. The graceful neck, the particular way she tucked her hair behind her ear. Even in the ragged coat, several sizes too large, even with her face thinner than he remembered, it was her. It had to be. Audra. She was crouched beside a makeshift cardboard sign, her attention focused on 2 small girls beside her. They appeared to be around 9 years old, identical, down to their matching dark curls, curls that looked eerily like his own childhood photographs. "Sir, Mr. Harrington, are you there?" Diana's voice faded to white noise. Without thinking, Thatcher stepped off the curb against the light, narrowly avoiding being hit by a taxi that blared its horn in angry protest. He didn't care. He needed to reach her before she disappeared again. "Audra," he called out, his voice barely carrying over the city noise. Her head snapped up, and their eyes met across the crowded street. For one suspended moment, recognition flashed in her once familiar green eyes, followed immediately by naked fear. In a fluid motion, she grabbed the girl's hands and turned to flee. "Wait," Thatcher called, pushing through the crowd more frantically now. "Please, Audra." But by the time he reached the spot where she had been, all that remained was the cardboard sign fluttering in the wind. "Please help. 2 children to feed. God bless." Thatcher stood frozen, staring at the sign, mind racing with impossible thoughts. Those girls, those identical girls with his curls, his jawline, they would have been conceived right around the time Audra vanished. The hollowness in his chest cracked open into something far more painful, a possibility that would change everything. Thatcher barely remembered returning to his penthouse apartment. The floor-to-ceiling windows that normally showcased a breathtaking city view might as well have been blank walls. He paced the Italian marble floors, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what it takes, Marcus. I need you to find her." Thatcher ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Yes, tonight. Use whatever resources necessary." The head of Harrington International's security team wasn't accustomed to hearing such urgency in his employer's voice. "Sir, with all due respect, finding one homeless woman in Manhattan. She has twin girls with her, dark hair, about 9 years old. They might be—" Thatcher's voice faltered. "Just find them." After ending the call, he sank into his leather sofa, mind racing with calculations. 10 years ago, Audra had been finishing her fine arts degree at NYU. They'd met at a gallery where she was working part-time, her genuine passion for the art, a refreshing contrast to the socialites he typically encountered. Within weeks, he'd been more in love than he thought possible. They'd planned a future together. And then she was gone. Apartment emptied, phone disconnected, social media deleted. It was as if she'd never existed. His mother had called it a fortunate escape from a gold digger. His uncle Garrison had suggested she'd found a wealthier prospect. Neither explanation had ever felt right to Thatcher, but he'd had no alternative theories until now. The intercom buzzed, jolting him from his thoughts. "Mr. Harrington, your mother is here to see you," his doorman announced. Thatcher closed, his eyes briefly. Waverley Harrington's timing had always been impeccable and usually inconvenient. "Send her up, Hector." Minutes later, Waverley swept into the apartment, Hermes scarf trailing elegantly behind her. At 65, she remained a formidable presence, tall, slender, with the same dark hair as her son, though hers was maintained by regular salon visits. "Darling, you look terrible," she announced, air-kissing his cheek. "The Nakamura deal isn't going that poorly, is it?" "I'm fine, Mother." "Just a long day." Thatcher moved to the bar, pouring himself 2 fingers of scotch. "What brings you by?" "The seating chart for the gala, of course. The Prestons' divorce has created a diplomatic nightmare. I need you beside Eliza Whitmore. Her father's support for the hospital wing would be quite useful." Waverley paused, studying him. "Are you sure you're all right? You seem distracted." For a fleeting moment, Thatcher considered telling her about Audra, about the twins who might be his daughters, but something, instinct or self-preservation, stopped him. "I saw someone from my past today," he said instead. "It was unexpected." Waverley's perfectly manicured hand paused midway to her pearls. "Oh, anyone I know." "No one important," he lied, turning away to hide his expression. "A college acquaintance." Later, after Waverley had departed with his reluctant promise to escort Eliza Whitmore, Thatcher stood at his window watching the city lights. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus' possible lead. "Woman and twin girls matching description spotted at St. Michael's shelter 3 weeks ago. Haven't returned since, working on current location." Thatcher stared at the message, heart pounding. This was real. This was happening. Whatever truth Audra had taken with her a decade ago was about to resurface, and nothing would ever be the same. From a drawer in his desk, he withdrew the only photograph of Audra he'd kept, her carefree smile, her bright eyes full of promise. He traced her face with his fingertip. "Where are you hiding?" he whispered. "And why did you run?" Outside the day, gathering storm clouds finally burst, sending rain streaming down the glass in rivulets that mirrored his inner turmoil. Somewhere in this vast city, 3 souls connected to him by blood or memory or both were out there in this downpour, and he was determined to find them before morning light. The rain hadn't stopped by morning, turning Manhattan into a glistening labyrinth of reflections and shadows. Thatcher had barely slept, his dreams haunted by twin girls, with his eyes and Audra's frightened face. He cancelled his meetings despite Diana's protests about the Nakamura representatives already being in town. At 10:17 a.m., his phone lit up with Marcus's name. "We've located them, sir," Marcus said without preamble. "They're staying in an abandoned building near the High Line. The city marked it for demolition, but it's been caught in permit disputes." "Text me the address. I'm on my way." "Sir, I strongly advise against going personally. That area has seen increased criminal activity, and your presence would attract—" "The address, Marcus. Now." 20 minutes later, Thatcher's driver pulled up half a block from a dilapidated 5-story building, its windows bordered with plywood graffiti sprawling across its brick facade. "Wait here," Thatcher instructed, ignoring the driver's concerned expression. The rain plastered his expensive suit to his skin as he approached the building, noticing the small opening where one plywood sheet had been partially pried away from a ground-floor window. He peered inside but saw only darkness. "You looking for someone?" Thatcher turned to find a gaunt man of indeterminate age watching him from beneath a tattered umbrella. "Maybe," Thatcher replied cautiously. "A woman and 2 young girls." The man's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What do you want with Audra and her kids?" Hearing her name spoken aloud sent a jolt through Thatcher. "You know her?" "Depends who's asking." Thatcher reached for his wallet, but the man's expression hardened. "I don't want your money suit. Those 3 have enough vultures circling. Audra works hard to keep those girls safe." The man began to walk away. "Wait," Thatcher called. "I'm not here to harm them. I think the girls might be my daughters." The man paused, turning back to study Thatcher's face more carefully. "Huh, the eyes are the same," he muttered. "But if you're their daddy, where you been all this time?" "I didn't know they existed until yesterday," Thatcher said quietly. "Audra disappeared 10 years ago. I never knew why." Something in his voice must have convinced the man, who sighed heavily. "They ain't here now anyway. Thursday mornings they go to the community center on West 23rd. Free meals and the girls can use the computers there." He pointed a weathered finger at Thatcher. "But you listen to me suit. Those three have been through enough. You go stirring. Cap trouble, you'll answer to more than just me." Thatcher nodded solemnly. "I only want to help them. That's what they all say." The man turned away again. "Community center closes at 3 if you're still interested after seeing how the other half lives come back here. I'll tell Audra you're looking for her. She can decide for herself if she wants to be found." As the man disappeared around a corner, Thatcher checked his watch. 11:22 a.m. Almost 4 hours until the community center closed. 4 hours to prepare for a reunion a decade in the making. A reunion with the woman who had vanished from his life and the children who might change it forever. Back in his car, he made a call to his most trusted lawyer. "Jackson, I need a favor. There's a community center on West 23rd that provides services for the homeless. I want to make an anonymous donation, enough to keep their programs running for, let's say, 5 years, and I need it done today." "That's not how charitable donations usually work, Thatcher. There are processes, tax considerations. Today, Jackson, consider it a down payment on years of missed child support." The words hung in the air between them, laden with implications that Thatcher wasn't ready to fully explain. But as he ended the call and directed his driver to take him back to his apartment, to change, one thought crystallized with absolute clarity. Whether Audra welcomed him back into her life or not, whether those girls were his or not, he would not let them spend another night in that abandoned building. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "The Harrington legacy is all that matters in the end, darling." For the first time, Thatcher understood what that legacy might truly mean, and it had nothing to do with business mergers or charity galas. The West 23rd Street Community Center looked nothing like the sleek modern buildings Thatcher typically frequented. Its brick facade was weathered, its interior fluorescent lighting harsh and unforgiving. Yet as he stepped inside, he was struck by the quiet dignity of the place. Walls lined with children's artwork, volunteers moving efficiently between stations, serving food and providing services. Thatcher had changed into jeans and a simple button-down shirt, attempting to blend in. Still, he felt conspicuous, aware of curious glances thrown his way. "Can I help you?" A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a name tag reading Gloria approached him. "I hope so," Thatcher replied quietly. "I'm looking for someone, a woman named Audra with twin daughters." Gloria's expression immediately closed off. "We respect our client's privacy here, sir. I'm afraid I can't help you." "Please," Thatcher persisted. "It's important. I'm not here to cause trouble." That's what the debt collector said last month, and the ex-boyfriend before that. Gloria crossed her arms. "Everyone has a reason. Everyone claims it's important." Thatcher hadn't considered how often Audra might have needed to hide to protect herself and the girls from various threats. The thought made his stomach clench. "My name is Thatcher Harrington," he said finally. "Audra and I were together 10 years ago. I believe the twins might be my daughters, but I only discovered their existence yesterday. I just want to talk to her." Gloria studied him for a long moment. "Wait here," she said finally, then disappeared through a door marked "Staff Only." Left alone, Thatcher scanned the room. In a far corner he spotted them, the twins seated side by side at a computer station, their dark curls bent together over the screen. Even from a distance he could see one girl gesturing animatedly while the other listened intently. The sight of them, alive, real, possibly his, made his chest tighten painfully. Gloria returned, interrupting his thoughts. "Audra doesn't want to see you," she said flatly. "She asks that you respect her wishes and leave." Disappointment crashed through him, though he'd half expected this response. Could you give her something from me, a business card, or... That's not how this works, Mr. Harrington. Gloria's tone softened slightly. Many of our clients are women fleeing difficult situations. We don't pass along messages or materials without consent. Thatcher nodded, understanding the protocol even as frustration built inside him. Then perhaps I could make a donation to your center. No strings attached, completely anonymous. Gloria's eyebrows rose. Our development office would certainly welcome a conversation about that. But if you're hoping it buys you access to Audra, I should be clear. It doesn't, Thatcher assured her. But I saw the computer lab, the meal program. These services matter to everyone here. Something in his sincerity must have reached. Gloria, she gestured toward a small office. Janet handles our donations, and Mr. Harrington. For what it's worth, those girls are wonderful children. Bright, resilient. Whoever their father is should be proud. The comment pierced him like a physical pain. Whoever their father is. The uncertainty was unbearable. In Janet's cramped office, Thatcher made arrangements for a substantial donation. Enough. To upgrade the computer lab, expand the meal program, and establish a small emergency housing fund. He wrote the check without hesitation, waving away Janet's tearful gratitude. As he turned to leave, he nearly collided with a slender figure in the doorway. Audra. 10 years had changed her. The carefree artist he'd known had been replaced by a woman whose eyes held shadows and whose face carried the fine lines of hardship. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her clothes clean but worn. Yet there was still something luminous about her, a quiet strength that took his breath away. "Your donation," she said softly. "Is it really anonymous?" Thatcher struggled to find his voice. "Yes. No conditions. No recognition sought." "Why?" The single word contained multitudes. Why now? Why help? Why return to her life after so long? "Because it's needed," he answered simply. "And because I saw those girls using the computers. Whatever is between us, Audra, they deserve every opportunity." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps, or the faintest hint of the connection they'd once shared. "I don't want your money, Thatcher. Not for myself." "I know." He took a cautious step toward her. "But we need to talk, Audra. About what happened, about the girls." Her green eyes, once so open to him now, guarded their secrets carefully. "Not here, not today." Then Audra glanced over her shoulder, checking on the twins who remained absorbed in their computer screen. "Tomorrow, Riverside Park near the 79th Street boat basin. 10 a.m. She turned to leave, then paused. "Come alone. If I see anyone else, anyone from your family or your company, I'll disappear again. And this time you won't find us, sir." Before Thatcher could respond, she was gone, moving swiftly back to the girls. He watched as she leaned down to speak to them, her hand gently brushing one twin's hair back from her forehead, a gesture so tender it made his throat tighten. Tomorrow. After 10 years of questions, he would finally get answers. As Thatcher left the community center, stepping back into the rain that continued to fall steadily over the city, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a decade, hope fragile but unmistakable, breaking through the hollow spaces inside him. Riverside Park glistened with leftover raindrops, the Hudson River a steel-gray mirror beneath cloudy skies. Thatcher arrived 20 minutes early, tension gathering between his shoulder blades as he found a bench with a clear view of the surrounding paths. He'd barely slept, his mind churning with questions, imagined conversations, and plans he had no right to make yet. At precisely 10 a.m., he spotted her approaching, alone. The absence of the twins sent a pang of disappointment through him, though. He understood her caution. "You came," he said, standing as she neared. "I considered not showing." Audra remained standing, maintaining distance between them. Gone was the frightened woman from Fifth Avenue, replaced by someone with wary determination. "Gloria told me about your donation. It wasn't meant to manipulate you, wasn't it?" Her voice carried a sharpness he'd never heard from her before. "The Thatcher I knew was always strategic. The Thatcher you knew is still trying to understand why the woman he loved vanished without a trace." He fought to keep accusation from his tone. 10 years, Audra, not a word." She looked away, watching a ferry traverse the river. "You have questions." "So do I. Like why your family's high-priced security team suddenly started following me last week. Thatcher shook his head. I only sent them looking for you after I saw you 2 days ago, not before. This seemed to surprise her. Then who? She trailed off, visibly recalculating. The girls. You want to know about the girls? Are they mine? The question that had consumed him erupted without preamble. Audra met his gaze directly. Yes. The simple confirmation hit him like a physical blow. He sank back onto the bench, the world simultaneously expanding and contracting around him. Daughters. He had daughters. Their names are Maeve and Sloane, Audra continued, her voice softening. They're 9 years old. Maeve is older by 7 minutes, and never let Sloane forget it. 9 years, Thatcher repeated numbly. 9 years of their lives gone. First steps, first words. I have photos, Audra said unexpectedly. From her worn messenger bag, she extracted a small battered photo album. Not many. Keeping things while living, the way we do, it's difficult. Thatcher accepted the album with trembling hands. The first image showed tiny infants, identical and perfect, swaddled in hospital blankets. When were they born? January 15th. It was snowing. A ghost of a smile touched Audra's lips. They were early. The doctor said twins often are. Page by page, Thatcher absorbed fragments of his daughter's existence, precious milestones captured despite circumstances he could barely imagine. A first birthday with a single cupcake split between them. Toddlers with matching pigtails, gap-toothed. Smiles in front of what appeared to be a shelter Christmas tree. Maeve loves books, stories of all kinds. Audra's voice grew animated despite herself. She remembers everything she reads word for word, and Sloane draws constantly. She can create whole worlds with just a pencil and paper. Thatcher looked up, overwhelmed. They have your creativity, and my stubbornness, apparently. Something unspoken passed between them, a shared recognition of the genetic dance that had created these children, regardless of the circumstances that had kept them apart. Why didn't you tell me? Thatcher asked, the question that had burned inside him finally emerging. Why disappear? Whatever happened between us, I had a right to know about them. Audra's face hardened again. Did I disappear, Thatcher, or was I removed? What are you talking about? Your mother and uncle made it very clear what would happen if I stayed in your life. Audra's words fell between them like stones, especially once the Nakamura negotiations began. Thatcher stared at her, uncomprehending. My mother. And Garrison. What do they have to do with this? You really don't know. It wasn't a question, but a realization. Audra looked away again, gathering herself. 2 days after you left for the Tokyo trip, they came to my apartment. Told me I was a distraction you couldn't afford during the most important deal of your career. Offered me a significant amount of money to disappear. And you took it. Disbelief and betrayal colored his voice. I refused it, Audra shot back. Told them I'd wait for you to return, that we'd face whatever came together. That's when the threats began. Threats. The hollow feeling in Thatcher's chest was expanding, consuming him. Waverley explained exactly how they would systematically destroy any chance I had of finishing my degree or working in the art world. Garrison was more explicit about ensuring my family back home would suffer financial consequences as well. Audra's composure cracked slightly. My mother was still recovering from cancer treatments, the medical bills. So you took the money. Thatcher couldn't keep the hurt from his voice. I took enough to ensure my mother's bills were paid, yes. Audra's chin lifted defiantly. I didn't know I was pregnant then. When I found out, I tried to make the rest last. But eventually, there was nothing left. The implications crashed over Thatcher in waves. His family, his own blood, had orchestrated Audra's disappearance, had threatened and coerced her, all while he'd been securing the very business deal they'd used as justification. I never knew, he said hoarsely. I searched for you, Audra, for months. Did you? Her question held genuine uncertainty. Waverley told me you'd agreed it was for the best. that you were relieved to focus on your career without complications. The manipulations layered upon manipulations made Thatcher's head spin. Before he could respond, Audra glanced at her watch. "I need to pick up the girls from the center soon." She hesitated. "What happens now, Thatcher? You've found us, you know the truth. What do you want?" The question was impossibly complex, yet his answer came with surprising clarity. "I want to meet my daughters. I want to help give them the life they deserve." He met her gaze steadily. "And I want to understand everything that happened, not just to you but in my own family. There are still pieces missing." Audra studied him, weighing his sincerity against a decade of hardship. "The girls have asked about their father," she admitted finally. "I've never spoken ill of you. I told them you didn't know about them, that circumstances kept us apart." Hope flared in Thatcher's chest. "Will you let me meet them properly?" "One step at a time," Audra cautioned. "They've had enough upheaval in their lives." She reached for the photo album, her fingers brushing his, as she reclaimed it. "Saturday. The center has a children's program in the morning. Come at noon. We can introduce you as a friend first." It wasn't everything he wanted, but it was a beginning. As Audra turned to leave, Thatcher called after her. "Where are you staying now? That building by the High Line, it's not safe." Audra's shoulders stiffened. "We manage." "Please," Thatcher said, "let me help. A hotel room at least. Somewhere secure for the girls." The internal battle played out visibly on Audra's face. Pride warring with practicality, distrust with a mother's desire to provide better for her children. "Gloria can arrange it," she said finally. "Through the center's emergency housing fund, the one you established yesterday." With that compromise, she walked away, leaving Thatcher on the bench, with revelations that threatened the foundation of everything he'd believed about his family, his past, and the legacy he'd spent a decade building in the absence of love. The children's room at the community center erupted with laughter as Thatcher stepped inside. About a dozen kids were scattered around various activity stations, some drawing, others playing board games, a few reading in a corner nook. It took him only seconds to spot his daughters. They sat at a small table, heads bent in concentration, over a massive jigsaw puzzle. Even dressed identically in faded jeans and purple sweatshirts, he could immediately sense their distinct personalities. One girl, Maeve he guessed, was systematically organizing puzzle pieces by color and edge type, while her sister appeared to be working intuitively, trying pieces where they felt right. Audra stood nearby, speaking quietly with Gloria. When she noticed Thatcher, she gave a small nod of acknowledgement. "Mr. Harrington," Gloria greeted him warmly. "So glad you could join us today. Your donation has already made such a difference. We've ordered new computers and the meal program has expanded to weekends." "I'm happy to help," Thatcher replied, though his attention remained fixed on the twins. Audra touched Gloria's arm. "Would you give us a moment?" When they were alone, Audra took a deep breath. "I've told them that you're an old friend who's recently come back into my life, nothing more yet." "I understand." Despite his eagerness, Thatcher respected her caution. "Maeve Sloane," Audra called softly. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." Both girls looked up simultaneously, their movements so similar it made Thatcher's heart clench. They approached with matching curious expressions, though one girl hung slightly behind her sister. "This is Mr. Harrington," Audra said, "the friend I mentioned." "You can call me Thatcher," he said, kneeling to meet them at eye level. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable, his dark curls, his jaw, but Audra's green eyes and smile. "I'm Maeve," said the slightly taller twin, extending her hand with surprising formality. "That's Sloane. She doesn't talk much to new people." Thatcher shook the offered hand gently. "It's very nice to meet you both. That's an impressive puzzle you're working on." "It's 1,000 pieces," Maeve informed him. "We've never done one that big before, but Ms. Gloria said we could leave it here until it's finished." Sloane studied him with quiet intensity, her eyes moving methodically over his features as if memorizing them. "Do you like puzzles, Mr. Thatcher?" she finally asked, her voice softer than her sister's but clear. "I do," he replied truthfully, "though I'm not very patient with them. I tend to try forcing pieces where they don't belong." Sloane's serious expression broke into a small smile. That never works. You have to listen to what the puzzle wants. The philosophical observation from this 9-year-old girl, his daughter, nearly undid him. Would you like to help us? Maeve asked. We're doing the sky parts now. They're the hardest. I'd love to, Thatcher said, glancing at Audra for permission. She nodded. I need to help Gloria with some paperwork. Will you be okay here with Mr. Harrington for a little while? The girls nodded in unison, already turning back to their puzzle. As Thatcher settled into a child-sized chair beside them, he felt entirely out of place, yet exactly where he belonged. Are you rich? Maeve asked bluntly as she handed him a blue puzzle piece. Thatcher nearly choked. What makes you ask that on your watch? Sloane answered, pointing to his wrist. It's like the ones in the magazine ads, and your shoes don't have any scuffs. Their observational skills were remarkable and slightly unnerving. I have been fortunate in my work, Thatcher acknowledged carefully. Mum says being rich isn't important, Maeve continued, fitting two pieces together with satisfaction. She says what matters is being rich in here. She pointed to her heart. Your mother is very wise, Thatcher said, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. But having an apartment would be nice, Sloane added quietly. Somewhere we didn't have to leave when the shelters close. The simple statement struck Thatcher like a physical blow. While he'd been living in luxury, his own children had been without a stable home. Everyone deserves a safe place to live, he managed to say. For the next hour, Thatcher immersed himself in their world, listening as Maeve recounted the plot of a book she'd read at the centre's library, watching in awe as Sloane transformed a blank sheet of paper into an intricate cityscape. They worked together on the puzzle, and Thatcher marveled at how natural it felt, this connection with children he'd only just met. When Audra returned, she seemed surprised by the easy rapport that had developed. We finished the sky, Maeve announced, proudly. And Mr. Thatcher didn't even try to force any pieces, Sloane added with a shy smile. Audra's eyes met Thatcher's over their daughters' heads, something unspoken passing between them. Girls, it's almost time for lunch, she said. Why don't you wash up while I speak with Mr. Harrington? When they were alone, Audra's composure wavered. Slightly. They seem comfortable with you. They're extraordinary, Audra, Thatcher said softly. Smart, perceptive, resilient. You've done an amazing job raising them. Under impossible circumstances. Her voice held a decade of struggle. Let me help change those circumstances. Thatcher leaned forward earnestly. Not just temporary. Housing through the centre, something permanent, an apartment, good schools, healthcare, everything they need. Audra's expression grew guarded again. And what would that cost me? What would be expected in return? The question stung, though he understood its origin. Nothing. This isn't a transaction, Audra. Those girls are my daughters too, regardless of whether you and I... He trailed off, unsure how to articulate the complicated feelings between them. I won't be controlled by Harrington money, she said firmly. Not again. This would be different. A trust for the girls legally separated from my family's influence. And, he hesitated, then pressed on, I want to understand exactly what happened 10 years ago. The whole truth. Audra's gaze sharpened. What do you mean? The timing of your disappearance, my mother and Garrison's involvement, the Nakamura deal. There are connections I need to unravel. Thatcher's voice hardened slightly. Someone has been following you, and it wasn't my security team. If my family threatened you once, they might do it again. Fear flickered across Audra's face. The girls will be protected, Thatcher promised. I have resources, Audra. Let me use them to keep all of you safe while I get to the bottom of this. The twins returned, interrupting their conversation. Maeve immediately sensed the tension. Is everything okay, Mom? Audra quickly composed herself. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Mr. Harrington was just saying goodbye for today. Disappointment shadowed both girls' faces. Will you come back? Sloane asked quietly. Thatcher looked to Audra, leaving the decision in her hands. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Mr. Harrington will be helping us move to a new place tomorrow, somewhere safe with real beds and a kitchen. Hope bloomed in Thatcher's chest as the girls' faces lit up with excitement. Really no more shelter? Maeve asked, bouncing on her toes. Really? Audra confirmed. To Thatcher she added, "On our terms, for the girls." As he stood to leave, Sloane unexpectedly reached for his hand. "Thank you for helping with the puzzle," she said, her small fingers warm against his palm. The simple contact, the first touch from his daughter, sent emotion cascading through him. "It was my pleasure," he managed to reply. "I hope we can finish it together soon." Outside the center, Thatcher pulled out his phone and made a call. "Prescott, this is Thatcher Harrington. I need your services for a delicate investigation. It concerns my family corporate finances from a decade ago and possible surveillance of a woman named Audra Mitchell. Complete discretion is essential." As he ended the call, Thatcher's resolve crystallized. Someone had orchestrated the destruction of his family 10 years ago. Someone was watching Audra now, and he wouldn't rest until he uncovered every last secret, no matter how painful the truth might be. "This is really all ours." Maeve spun in circles in the spacious living room of the furnished two-bedroom apartment Thatcher had arranged through his real estate connections. Located in a secure building with 24-hour doorman service, it offered both safety and comfort without ostentation. "For as long as we need it," Audra confirmed, watching her daughters explore their new temporary home with a mixture of relief and lingering wariness. Sloane stood by the window, gazing at the small park across the street. "There are trees," she said softly, "and a playground." Thatcher, standing back to give them space, felt his throat tighten. Such simple pleasures that most children took for granted had become luxuries for his daughters. "The kitchen is stocked with groceries," he mentioned, "and there are some art supplies in the smaller bedroom. I remembered you mentioned Sloane likes to draw." Audra shot him a look that mingled gratitude with caution. That was thoughtful. 3 days had passed since their conversation at the community center. 3 days of careful arrangements, of establishing boundaries, of Thatcher fighting his instinct to overcompensate with extravagance. He'd respected Audra's wish for simplicity, no grand gestures, no excessive gifts that might create dependency or discomfort. "Can we go to the park later?" Maeve asked, already opening kitchen cabinets to inspect their contents. "We'll see," Audra replied, the automatic response of a parent accustomed to uncertain circumstances. "First, let's get settled." As the girls continued their explorations, Audra motioned Thatcher toward the small balcony. Outside, with the door partially closed, they could speak privately. "Has your investigator found anything?" she asked without preamble. "Prescott is thorough but discreet. He's focusing on financial records from the time you disappeared." Thatcher leaned against the railing. "The Nakamura deal was worth billions, but there were inconsistencies in how the funds were allocated afterward. Garrison handled most of those details." "Do you think he was stealing from the company?" "It's possible, but that wouldn't explain why they were so desperate to remove you from my life." Thatcher frowned. "Unless you saw something, heard something. I was an art student." "Thatcher," Audra reminded him, "I wasn't involved in your business affairs, but you were in my life, in my apartment where I sometimes worked, in conversations where—" He trailed off, a memory surfacing. "Wait, there was that weekend about a month before you disappeared. We were at my place and Garrison stopped by unannounced with those documents he needed me to sign immediately." Audra's brow furrowed. "I remember. You were in the shower. He seemed surprised and displeased to find me there alone." "Did he say anything to you, or did you happen to see the documents?" "He was on his phone most of the time, speaking Japanese." Audra's eyes widened slightly. "I never thought anything of it, but he was very insistent that I not mention his visit to you. Said it was a surprise related to the deal." Thatcher's expression darkened. "Garrison doesn't speak Japanese. He always used translators for the Nakamura negotiations." Their eyes met, both recognizing the significance of this detail. "I'll tell Prescott," Thatcher said. "It might be nothing but—" A small voice interrupted them. "Mom, Mr. Thatcher, can we have lunch? There's mac and cheese in the cabinet." They turned to find Maeve watching them from the doorway, her expression curious. "Of course, sweetheart," Audra replied, smoothing her features into a smile. "Let's see what we can make." The domestic scene that followed, preparing a simple meal together, the girls chattering about their new space, Audra gradually relaxing into the security of their surroundings, felt surreal to Thatcher. He moved carefully within this fragile family unit, conscious of being both essential and peripheral, connected by blood, but separated by years of absence. As they ate, Sloane unexpectedly asked, "Are you going to be our dad now?" The question hung in the air, stopping all conversation. Audra's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Sloane," she began, but Thatcher gently interjected, "It's okay." He turned to the girls, choosing his words with care. "The truth is, I knew your mum a long time ago before you were born. We cared about each other very much, but then we were separated by circumstances beyond our control. I didn't know about you until very recently." "But you have the same hair as us," Maeve observed. "And Sloane makes the same face when she's thinking." Thatcher exchanged a glance with Audra, who gave a small nod of permission. "Yes," he confirmed softly. "I am your biological father. But being a real dad means more than just that. It means being there for you, earning your trust, learning about who you are. I've missed 9 years of your lives, and that's time I can never get back. But if you're willing, I'd like the chance to be part of your lives going forward." The twins processed this information with remarkable composure. After a moment, Maeve spoke up. "Mom always said our dad didn't know about us, that it wasn't his fault he wasn't here." She looked at Audra. "You told the truth." "I always try to," Audra said softly. "Do we have to call you Dad?" Sloane asked Thatcher directly. "No," he answered immediately. "You can call me Thatcher unless you ever feel comfortable with something else." The simple honesty of the exchange had cleared the air, removing the weight of unspoken truths. As they finished lunch, a new ease settled over the apartment. Not perfection, but possibility. Later, as Thatcher prepared to leave, his phone buzzed with a text from Prescott. "Found something significant. Need to meet ASAP. Not secure to discuss electronically." A chill ran through him. Before he could respond, another text arrived. Also, confirmed surveillance on A and children. Professional operation, not police. Recommend immediate security measures. Thatcher looked up to find Audra watching him, reading his expression. "Bad news?" she asked quietly, the girls occupied with unpacking in their new bedroom. "Prescott has information, but it's not secure to discuss over the phone." Thatcher hesitated. "And he's confirmed someone is watching you and the girls." Fear flashed across Audra's face. "Who? He doesn't say, but I'm going to find out." Thatcher's voice hardened with determination. "I'm leaving 2 security personnel in the lobby. No one enters this building without clearance." "Thatcher, you're scaring me." He took her hands impulsively. "I promise you, Audra, no one will harm you or the girls. Not again. Whatever my family did 10 years ago, whatever they're trying to protect now, it ends here." The fierce protectiveness in his voice seemed to reassure her. She squeezed his hands before releasing them. "Find out what Prescott knows," she said. "But be careful. Your mother and Garrison, they're powerful, people with a lot to lose." As Thatcher left the apartment, nodding to the security team, now stationed discreetly in the lobby, a cold clarity settled over him. For a decade, he'd trusted the family legacy he'd been raised to protect. Now, with everything that truly mattered at stake, he was prepared to tear that legacy apart to uncover the truth, whatever the cost. The private investigator's office was deliberately nondescript, tucked away in a commercial building that had seen better days. Thatcher found Ellis, Prescott, waiting for him, a lean man in his 50s with shrewd eyes and the patient demeanor of someone accustomed to untangling complex puzzles. "Mr. Harrington," Prescott greeted him, gesturing to a chair across from his cluttered desk. "Thank you for coming in person." "Your message suggested urgency," Thatcher replied, taking the offered seat. "What have you found?" Prescott opened a file folder. "Let's start with the surveillance issue. The team watching Ms. Mitchell and her daughters is professional, ex-military or intelligence based on their patterns and equipment. They're being paid through a series of shell companies that eventually trace back to Garrison Harrington's personal accounts." Thatcher's jaw tightened. "My uncle is having them followed. Why now after all this time?" "That connects to my other findings." Prescott extracted several documents. "I've been examining financial records surrounding the Nakamura deal from 10 years ago. On paper, everything looks legitimate. A $12 billion acquisition that transformed Harrington International into a global powerhouse. But, Thatcher prompted, sensing the investigators' reservation, but approximately $2 billion was diverted through a complex series of transactions immediately following the deal's completion. Prescott slid a chart across the desk. These funds were ostensibly directed toward acquisitions of smaller, Japanese tech companies, but those companies either don't exist or were purchased for a fraction of the reported amounts. Thatcher studied the document, cold anger building inside him. $2 billion, stolen from my company. Not just your company, Prescott corrected. The Nakamura family as well. They were equal partners in these supposed acquisitions. And Garrison orchestrated this. With help. The transactions required multiple approvals, complex documentation, international banking access. Prescott hesitated. Including signatures from the CFO at the time. My mother, Thatcher said flatly. Waverley had served as Harrington International's CFO until her semi-retirement 5 years ago. She was complicit. It appears so. Prescott pushed another document forward. But here's where Ms. Mitchell becomes relevant. The diversion of funds began immediately after she disappeared from your life, and the first significant transfer occurred the very day you signed these particular documents. Thatcher recognized his own signature on a stack of acquisition approvals dated exactly 10 days after Audra had vanished, the day he'd returned early from Tokyo, devastated by her unexplained departure. I was distracted, he murmured, devastated by her disappearance. I trusted Garrison and my mother to handle the details while I... He couldn't finish the sentence. While you were searching for her, Prescott completed gently, they created the perfect diversion. Your emotional state made you less attentive to the business details, giving them the opening they needed. The betrayal cut deeper than Thatcher had imagined possible. His own family had not only driven away the woman he loved, but had used his subsequent pain as cover for massive financial fraud. There's more, Prescott continued. The Nakamura family has recently launched an internal audit of all their international holdings. If they discover the discrepancies, they'll ruin Harrington International, Thatcher finished. The company, our reputation, everything my grandfather built. And potentially pursue criminal charges against those responsible. Prescott nodded. Which explains why your uncle is suddenly very interested in locating Ms. Mitchell again. She's the loose end from 10 years ago. The one person who might have overheard or seen something incriminating during the planning stages. Thatcher remembered Audra's account of Garrison's unexpected visit, his secretive phone call in supposed Japanese. She doesn't even realize what she knows, he said, but Garrison can't be certain of that. Precisely why she and the children remain at risk. Prescott closed the folder. There's one more thing. The day before Ms. Mitchell was approached by your mother and uncle, she left a message with your assistant about meeting with you urgently when you returned from Tokyo. She said it concerned something important she'd discovered. This new piece of information hit Thatcher like a physical blow. I never received that message. No, Prescott agreed. You wouldn't have. The implications cascaded through Thatcher's mind. Not only had his family forced Audra away, but they had intercepted her attempt to reach him, perhaps with information that could have exposed their scheme before it began. I need copies of everything, Thatcher said, rising from his chair. And I need you to continue the investigation. Find every last detail, every accomplice, every dollar. What do you intend to do with this information, Mr. Harrington? Prescott asked carefully. Thatcher's expression hardened. First, ensure Audra and my daughters are completely safe. Then, he paused, the weight of his decision settling on him. Then I'm going to confront the people responsible and make sure they can never harm my family again. Back in his car, Thatcher sat motionless, processing all he had learned. His phone buzzed with a text from Audra. The girls are asking when you'll visit again. They want to show you their new school uniforms. Gloria helped us with enrollment. The simple domestic message contrasted sharply with the dark revelations of the past hour. In just days, Thatcher had discovered he was a father, reunited with the woman he'd never stopped loving, and uncovered a devastating betrayal at the heart of his family legacy. He typed a reply. I'll come tomorrow afternoon. There are some things we need to discuss, important things about the past and the future. As his driver pulled away from Prescott's office, Thatcher made another call, this one to his lawyer. Jackson, I need you to prepare documentation transferring 30% of my personal holdings into an irrevocable trust. Beneficiaries will be Maeve and Sloan Mitchell, with Audra Mitchell as trustee until the girls turn 25. There was a startled pause on the other end. Thatcher, that's over $1 billion. Are you certain? Completely certain, Thatcher interrupted. And I need it done immediately with maximum privacy protections. No one, especially not my mother or Garrison, can know about this until it's completed. The decision felt right necessary. Whatever confrontation lay ahead, Thatcher was determined that his daughters and their mother would be financially secure, independent of whatever fallout might come from exposing the truth about Harrington International. Some legacies were worth protecting. Others needed to be dismantled to make room for something more honest, more meaningful. As Thatcher looked out at the city speeding past his window, he felt both dread and determination in equal measure. The final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, leading inexorably toward a confrontation he could no longer avoid. "You're very quiet today," Audra observed, setting a cup of coffee before Thatcher at the small dining table. The girls had gone to bed an hour earlier, exhausted from their first day at their new school, leaving the adults to a rare moment alone. 3 weeks had passed since their move into the apartment. 3 weeks of cautious adjustment of security measures and investigative reports of Thatcher gradually finding his place in his daughters' lives. The twins had accepted him with surprising ease, Maeve with enthusiastic questions about his life, Sloan with thoughtful observation and occasional shy smiles. Prescott completed his investigation, Thatcher said finally, his voice low. "I've been processing the findings." Audra sat across from him, her own coffee untouched. "And it's worse than we thought." Thatcher met her eyes directly. $2 billion. Dollars stolen from both Harrington International and the Nakamura family. An elaborate fraud orchestrated by Garrison, with my mother's active participation. "All this time I thought they were just being protective of you," Audra murmured, "keeping the unsuitable girlfriend away from the family heir." "They needed me distracted while they executed their plan. Your disappearance accomplished that perfectly." Bitterness edged his voice. "And now with the Nakamura family conducting an audit, they're afraid of what you might have seen or heard." Fear flashed across Audra's face. "The girls are safe," Thatcher assured her quickly. "The security team remains in place, and no one outside my most trusted circle knows your location." He hesitated. "But we need to decide our next move. I can't allow them to threaten you or the girls any longer. What options do we have?" "I could turn everything over to the authorities," Thatcher said. "The evidence Prescott has gathered would be enough to trigger a formal investigation, but that would be public messy. The girls would eventually learn that their grandmother and great-uncle are criminals." Audra considered this. Or I confront them directly. Offer a choice, resign from the company, return the funds they can still access, face private consequences, but avoid public humiliation. Thatcher's jaw tightened. "Though part of me thinks they deserve to face the full legal repercussions." "What happens to Harrington International if this becomes public?" Audra asked. The question surprised him. "Why does that matter to you?" "Because it's your legacy. The company your grandfather built, that you've dedicated your life to growing." Audra's expression softened. "And because, whether you realize it yet or not, it's Maeve and Sloane's legacy too." The insight struck Thatcher forcefully. Despite everything Audra had suffered at the hands of the Harrington family, she still considered what was best for his, for their daughter's future. The company would survive, but its reputation would be severely damaged, he admitted. Stock prices would plummet. Thousands of jobs could be affected. "Then you need to find a third option," Audra said with quiet certainty. "One that holds Garrison and Waverley accountable without destroying everything else in the process." Thatcher studied her face, marveling at her capacity for nuanced thinking after all she'd endured. "When did you become so wise about corporate ethics?" A small smile touched her lips. I've had 9 years of making impossible choices, Thatcher, of balancing what's right against what's necessary. Her expression grew serious again. But whatever you decide, the girls and I can't remain in limbo forever. They're settling into school, making friends. They need stability. The trust is established, Thatcher told her. Regardless of what happens with Garrison and my mother, you and the girls are financially secure. I never wanted your money, Audra reminded him quietly. It's not my money anymore, it's theirs, a future they deserve. Thatcher leaned forward. And there's something else we need to discuss, Audra. Something I've been wanting to ask since that first day I saw you again. On Fifth Avenue. Her eyes met his, wary but curious. When all this is resolved, he continued carefully, when we're no longer focusing on threats and investigations, what happens with us? The question hung between them, laden with a decade of lost time and recent revelations. I don't know, Audra answered honestly. 10 years ago I loved you completely, but that was a different lifetime. We're different people now. I never stopped loving you, Thatcher said simply. Even when I thought you'd chosen to leave, I couldn't. Stop. Audra looked away, emotion playing across her features. The girls are the priority now. They need stability, security. They need both their parents, Thatcher countered gently. Together or apart, we'll always be connected through them. But I hope, there could be more between us again. Not immediately, not without rebuilding trust and understanding. But someday. Before Audra could respond, Thatcher's phone buzzed with an incoming text. He glanced at it, his expression instantly hardening. What is it? Audra asked, recognizing the change. Garrison, Thatcher said grimly. He wants to meet tomorrow. Says it's urgent concerns, family matters he'd prefer to discuss privately. He knows something, Audra whispered. About the investigation about us, he knows. Let him. Thatcher decided, a cold clarity washing over him. It's time to end this. I'll meet with him, but on my terms, with my evidence in hand. Be careful, Audra urged. Garrison has already shown he's willing to go to extreme lengths to protect himself. I'm not the same naive young man I was a decade ago, Thatcher assured her, and I have something worth fighting for now. As if summoned by the intensity of their conversation, a small voice called from the hallway. Mom, I had a bad dream. They turned to find Sloane standing in the doorway, her dark curls tousled from sleep, her expression troubled. Audra immediately went to her daughter, kneeling to embrace her. It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe. I dreamed someone was trying to take us away again, Sloane murmured against her mother's shoulder, like when we had to leave the blue apartment in the middle of the night. The simple statement revealed another fragment of the difficult life his daughters had lived, sending a wave of protective fury through Thatcher. He approached them carefully, crouching beside Audra. Sloane, he said gently, I promise you that no one will make you and your sister and your mum leave your home again, not ever. The little girl studied his face with her solemn green eyes, searching for truth in his promise. You won't disappear either, she asked. No, Thatcher said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. I'll always be here for you no matter what. Something in his voice must have reassured her, because Sloane nodded once decision made. Then, to his surprise, she reached out and took his hand. Will you check under my bed for monsters? Mum always does, but maybe they're more scared of Dads. The simple request, with its casual acknowledgement of his place in her life, nearly overwhelmed him. I'd be honored, he managed to say, rising with her small hand still in his. As they walked back to the girls' bedroom, Audra watched them with an expression that mingled tenderness with lingering fear. Tomorrow, Thatcher would confront the real monsters who had threatened his family, but tonight he would chase away imaginary ones from beneath his daughter's bed, a father's privilege he'd been denied for far too long. The executive floor of Harrington International's headquarters had always impressed visitors with its understated elegance, Brazilian hardwood floors, tasteful art by established painters' furnishings that whispered old money rather than shouting new wealth. Thatcher had practically grown up in these rooms watching his grandfather. Then his mother and uncle shaped the company's destiny. Today, it felt like entering enemy territory. Thatcher, darling. Waverley rose from behind her desk, perfectly coiffed. as always moving to greet him with her customary air kiss. What a pleasant surprise. Garrison mentioned you'd requested a meeting, but he didn't say why. Thatcher stepped back, avoiding her touch. Where is he? Waverley's smile faltered slightly at his cool tone. He's finalizing some paperwork for the Reynolds acquisition. He should be joining us shortly. She gestured toward a seating area. Shall we have coffee while we wait? I'll stand, thank you. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Waverley studied her son with growing concern. You seem troubled, darling. Is everything all right with the Nakamura expansion? I heard there were some questions about the historical documentation. Interesting you should mention the Nakamuras, Thatcher replied evenly. They've been conducting a thorough audit of all joint ventures dating back to the original acquisition. Something flickered behind Waverley's composed expression. Standard procedure for Japanese corporations. Nothing to concern ourselves with. I disagree. Thatcher maintained steady eye. Contact. I think there's a great deal to be concerned about, particularly regarding the $2 billion that disappeared through shell companies after the deal closed. Waverley's perfectly manicured hand froze halfway to adjusting her pearls. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, Mother. Just as I think you know exactly why you forced Audra Mitchell out of my life 10 years ago. The color drained from Waverley's face. Audra, that artist girl Thatcher, that was a lifetime ago. Why would you possibly bring her up now? Because I've found her, Thatcher said simply. And my daughters. The office door opened before Waverley could respond, and Garrison strode in, tall, distinguished with the same confidence that had always made him Thatcher's childhood hero. Thatcher, excellent timing. I was just reviewing the quarterly projections and... He stopped, registering the tension in the room. What's going on? Thatcher is making some rather disturbing accusations, Waverley said, regaining her composure. About financial improprieties and that Mitchell woman from years ago. Garrison's expression hardened imperceptibly. I see. And what prompted this sudden interest in ancient history? Seeing Audra on the street 3 weeks ago, recognizing my own features in the faces of the twin daughters she was struggling to provide for. Thatcher's voice was deadly calm. Learning that my own family threatened and coerced the woman I loved into disappearing, then used my distraction to execute a massive financial fraud. These are serious allegations, Garrison said carefully. Based on what evidence? Thatcher removed a USB drive from his pocket, placing it on Waverley's desk. Everything is here. The shell companies, the falsified acquisitions, the diverted funds, the offshore accounts where much of the money still sits untouched. Waverley and Garrison exchanged a glance that confirmed everything. You've always been intelligent, Thatcher, Garrison said, his tone shifting to something more calculating. Surely you understand that exposing such allegations, however unfounded, would destroy this company, your grandfather's legacy, your own future. Don't talk to me about legacy, Thatcher replied, anger finally creeping into his voice. You used the company my grandfather built as your personal piggy bank. You drove away the woman I loved. You deprived me of knowing my children for 9 years. What kind of legacy is that? We did what was necessary, Waverley interjected, her voice hardening. That girl was a distraction. The Nakamura deal was too important to risk on a passing infatuation. It wasn't the deal you were protecting, Thatcher countered. It was your scheme to defraud our partners. Audra overheard something, didn't she? Or saw documents she wasn't meant to see? Garrison moved to the bar, pouring himself a drink with deliberate calm. What exactly do you want Thatcher money for? The girl and her children that can be arranged? Discreetly. They're not the girl and her children. They're Audra and my daughters Maeve and Sloane. Thatcher's voice gained intensity. And what I want is accountability. You have 2 options. Either you both resign from Harrington International, immediately return every dollar you stole that can still be accessed, and stay away from Audra and my daughters permanently. Or I turn this evidence over to the authorities and the Nakamura family. The threat hung in the air, heavy with implications. You wouldn't destroy your own family, Waverley said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. You stopped being family the moment you threatened the mother of my children, Thatcher replied. I'm giving you a chance to maintain your freedom and dignity, more than you deserve, but I do it for the sake of the thousands of employees who depend On this company's stability. Garrison set down his glass with a sharp click. And if we agree to these demands, what guarantee do we have that you won't expose us anyway? My word, Thatcher said simply, which, unlike yours, still means something. The three Harringtons stared at each other, decades of family history distorted by the revelations that now lay between them. I need time to consider, Garrison said finally. These are significant decisions. You have 24 hours, Thatcher replied, moving toward the door. Not a minute more. Thatcher, wait. Waverley's voice had lost its usual imperious tone. The girls, your daughters, are they well? The question, with its hint of genuine concern, caught Thatcher off guard. They're remarkable, intelligent, resilient kind, no thanks to the circumstances you forced upon them. Something like regret flickered across Waverley's features. I never intended... Save it, Thatcher cut her off. Your intentions stopped. Mattering the day you chose money over your own grandchildren's welfare. With that parting shot, he left the office, the weight of confrontation giving way to a strange lightness. Whatever Garrison and Waverley decided, he had stood his ground, had defended the family that truly mattered to him now. As the elevator descended, his phone buzzed with a text from Audra. Maeve got an A on her first math test. Sloane's art teacher. Wants to enter her drawing in a citywide contest. They can't wait to tell you when you visit tonight. The simple message, so full of ordinary parental pride, brought unexpected tears to Thatcher's eyes. Whatever happened next with Harrington International, with his mother and uncle, with the complex legal and financial fallout that might follow, this was the legacy that truly mattered. The chance to watch his daughters grow, to celebrate their achievements, to help them become the remarkable women they were already showing signs of becoming. As he stepped out into the bright autumn sunshine, Thatcher felt like he was truly leaving his father's house for the first time. Not in rejection, but in choosing a different, more authentic path forward. Dad, look what I made in art class. Maeve came bounding down the hallway the moment Thatcher entered the apartment, waving a colorful construction paper creation. The word Dad, so recently adopted by both girls, still sent a rush of emotion through him each time he heard it. 6 weeks had passed since his confrontation with Waverley and Garrison, 6 weeks of rebuilding and restructuring, both Harrington International and his own understanding of family. It's a model of the solar system, Maeve explained, proudly displaying her project. Ms. Patterson said mine was the most accurate in the class. It's fantastic, Thatcher praised, examining the carefully labeled planets. You even included Pluto. Pluto deserves respect, Maeve said seriously. Just because it's small doesn't mean it's not important. From the kitchen doorway, Audra watched their interaction with a soft smile. Over the past weeks, a cautious warmth had grown between them, rebuilding fragments of what they'd once shared, while acknowledging the people they'd become in the intervening years. Where's Sloane? Thatcher asked, hanging his coat in the entryway. Closet. A simple domestic gesture that still felt novel. In her room working on her story for the Young Writers competition, Audra replied. She's barely emerged all afternoon. Thatcher nodded with understanding. Sloane's dedication to her writing had intensified since her teacher had encouraged her to enter the citywide contest. I'll check on her in a bit. How did the board meeting go? Audra asked once Maeve had returned to her homework. Thatcher sighed, loosening his tie. About as expected. The financial restructuring is nearly complete. We've managed to compensate the Nakamura family for most of their losses without public disclosure of the original fraud. The solution they'd ultimately reached had been complex, but effective. Garrison had resigned, completely surrendering his assets and disappearing to a remote property in Montana. Waverley had relinquished all operational control while maintaining honorary status, a compromise that preserved appearances while removing her from any decision-making authority. And the company, Audra asked. Surviving. The new partnerships. First stabilizing our position. Thatcher ran a hand through his hair. It could have been much worse. What remained unspoken was the personal cost of these arrangements. Thatcher had effectively lost what remained of his birth family, trading it for the one he was now building with Audra and the girls. The exchange in his mind was more than worth it. I have news too, Audra said, a hint of excitement in her voice. The community center contacted me today. They want me to expand the art therapy program I've been volunteering with, make it a permanent position with actual salary and benefits. Audra, that's wonderful. Thatcher's genuine pleasure in her achievement reflected how far they'd come. In the beginning, she had resisted any financial support beyond what the girls needed, determined to rebuild her independence. His respect for her autonomy had been vital to healing the trust between them. It's part-time, so I can still be home when the girls get out of school, she continued. And I've been thinking, the apartment lease is up next month. A flicker of concern passed through Thatcher. Are you thinking of moving? Actually, I was wondering if you might consider moving in, Audra said quietly. We've been discussing it, the girls and I. They want you here all the time, not just for visits and dinners. The invitation stunned him into momentary silence. Despite their growing closeness, despite the easy affection that had developed between them, they had maintained separate residences, Audra and the girls in the apartment, Thatcher still in his penthouse across town. Is that something you want too? He asked carefully. Audra met his gaze directly. Yes, it is. The simple confirmation filled Thatcher with quiet joy. Before he could respond, Sloane appeared in the hallway, clutching a sheaf of handwritten pages. I finished my story, she announced. Would you both listen to it? Of course, sweetheart, Audra replied warmly. Let's sit in the living room. As they settled onto the sofa, Thatcher couldn't help noticing how naturally they'd formed a family unit. Sloane curled up in an armchair, reading glasses perched on her nose. Maeve sprawled on the floor with her homework occasionally glancing. Up to listen, Audra beside him on the sofa, close enough that their shoulders touched. It's called The Glass Castle, Sloane began, her clear voice gaining confidence as she read. Her story, surprisingly sophisticated for a 9-year-old, followed a young girl who discovered that the magnificent castle she could see in the distance was actually made of glass, beautiful but fragile hiding secrets within its transparent walls. Thatcher listened with growing amazement and a touch of disquiet. The parallels to their own situation, the illusory perfection of the Harrington legacy, the secrets that had shattered it, seemed too pointed to be coincidental. When Sloane finished reading, he applauded, along with Audra and Maeve, genuine in his praise, yet troubled by the insights his daughter had absorbed. That was remarkable, Sloane, he said. The imagery of the glass castle, it was very powerful. Sloane adjusted her glasses with a small, serious nod. I got the idea after you told us about Grandma and Uncle Garrison, how sometimes things that look perfect aren't really perfect at all. The candid comment caught Thatcher off guard. He and Audra had decided to tell the girls a simplified version of recent events, feeling they deserved some explanation for the family tensions. But he hadn't realized how deeply Sloane had processed the information. You're right, he acknowledged. Sometimes appearances can be deceiving, but you know what's stronger than glass? What? Sloane asked. The truth, Thatcher said simply. And families that choose to be honest with each other even when it's difficult. Like us, Maeve piped up from the floor. Exactly like us, Audra confirmed, her hand finding Thatcher's on the sofa between them. Later, after dinner and homework and bedtime stories, Thatcher and Audra stood together on the small balcony, watching the city lights. I didn't realize how much Sloane had internalized about what happened, Thatcher said quietly. That story, they understand more than we give them credit for, Audra replied. They've lived through enough instability to recognize it even in different forms. I never wanted them to be disillusioned about family. Better honest disillusionment than beautiful lies, Audra said gently. That's something I learned during our years alone. Truth is the foundation we build on even when it's painful. Thatcher turned to face her fully. Speaking of truth, your invitation earlier, about moving in together. Audra's expression grew uncertain. If it's too soon, it's not. Thatcher took her hands in his. It's exactly what I want. To be here with you and the girls to build something real together. Not just visits and dinners, but mornings and ordinary moments and all of it. Relief and happiness softened Audra's features. The girls will be thrilled. And you? Thatcher asked, moving slightly closer. I am cautiously overjoyed, Audra admitted with a small smile. It's taken us a long time to find our way back to each other. Worth every minute, Thatcher murmured, leaning forward to kiss her gently at first, then with growing certainty as she responded. When they separated, Audra's eyes held both warmth and lingering caution. We're not the same people we were 10 years ago. No, Thatcher agreed. We're better, stronger, more certain of what matters. As if to punctuate his words, his phone buzzed with an incoming text. Normally he would have ignored it, but the special alert tone indicated it was from security. I should check this, he apologized, pulling out his phone. His expression immediately darkened as he read the message. What is it? Audra asked, recognizing his concern. A note was delivered to my office today, Thatcher said grimly. Security just forwarded the contents. It's from Garrison. Audra tensed. What does it say? Thatcher showed her the screen where a photograph displayed a handwritten message. The truth has a way of emerging, especially when money gets tight. Think carefully about who your real family is, nephew. Some decisions can't be undone. Is that a threat? Audra asked, her voice tightening with worry. Possibly, Thatcher admitted, or just bitter ramblings from a man who's lost everything. Should we be concerned? Thatcher considered the question carefully. Security remains in place, the legal agreements are airtight. But, he hesitated, I'll have Prescott look into Garrison's recent activities just to be safe. The intrusion of the past into their hopeful moment felt like a shadow falling across the balcony. Audra shivered slightly in the evening air. Come inside, Thatcher said gently, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Whatever Garrison is planning, we'll face it together. He can't hurt us anymore. As they stepped back into the warmth of the apartment, their home soon to be shared officially, Thatcher hoped fervently that his assurance was true. The family they were building felt simultaneously precious and resilient, like Sloane's glass castle transformed into something stronger. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that one final confrontation remained before they could truly leave the past behind. And this is where you'll sit, Dad, Maeve announced, pointing to a folding chair she'd carefully labelled with a hand-drawn nameplate, right between Mum and Miss Gloria. The small backyard of their new brownstone was transformed for the occasion, twinkling. Lights strung between trees, folding chairs arranged in neat rows, simple flower arrangements adding touches of colour. In the 3 months since Thatcher had moved in with Audra and the girls, they'd made the decision to find a permanent home together, a symbol of their commitment to building a future as a family. It looks perfect, sweetheart, Thatcher assured, her admiring the decorations for tomorrow's ceremony. Though not technically a wedding, he and Audra had chosen to wait on that formal step. The family celebration would mark their official commitment to each other in front of friends and the small community that had become important to all of them. Sloane's inside helping Mum with the programs, Maeve informed him, adjusting a flower arrangement with critical attention. She rewrote the whole thing 3 times because she said the words weren't right. Thatcher smiled, recognizing his younger daughter's perfectionism. I'm sure they're beautiful now. As Maeve darted off to continue her preparations, Thatcher surveyed the peaceful scene with a contentment he'd never imagined possible a year ago. The shadow cast by Garrison's threatening note had gradually receded as months passed without incident. Prescott's investigation had revealed that Garrison had indeed left for Montana, apparently accepting his exile and the terms of their agreement. Waverly had been a more complex case. After initially withdrawing completely, she had tentatively reached out with a letter expressing regret, not a full apology, but an acknowledgement of harm done and a request to eventually meet her granddaughters. Thatcher and Audra had agreed to consider it once more time had passed, and the girls were ready. Dad, Sloane's voice called from the back door. Mum needs help with the fairy lights in the living room. Coming, he called back, giving the yard one final appreciative look before heading inside. The brownstone's interior was equally busy with preparation, with Audra balanced precariously on a stepladder, attempting to hang a string of lights along the archway between the living and dining rooms. This seems like a job for someone taller, Thatcher observed, moving to steady the ladder. My hero, Audra quipped, though her smile was genuine as she handed him the string of lights. I thought we'd have these continuing from the yard, so it... Feels like one connected space. Perfect, Thatcher agreed easily, reaching the height that had challenged her. As he worked, he marveled again at how seamlessly their lives had merged. His business acumen, complementing her artistic vision, his height, reaching what she couldn't, her emotional intuition, balancing his analytical approach. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. That's probably the cake delivery, Audra said, checking her watch. Can you get it? I need to finish the place cards. Thatcher made his way to the front door, expecting the bakery assistant they'd arranged to deliver their celebration cake. Instead, he found himself face to face with Garrison Harrington. His uncle looked markedly different from the powerful executive Thatcher remembered. Thinner his once impeccable appearance, now slightly disheveled eyes, holding a combination of defiance and desperation. "Hello, Thatcher," Garrison said, his voice carrying forced casualness. "Nice place you've got here." Thatcher instinctively moved to block the doorway, adrenaline surging. "What are you doing here, Garrison? Our agreement was clear. You stay away from my family." "Family," Garrison repeated, a bitter edge to his voice. "Interesting concept, isn't it? So easily redefined when convenient." "State your business and leave," Thatcher said coldly, keeping his voice low to avoid alerting Audra or the girls. Garrison held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I just came to talk. The Montana exile is costly. The terms of our agreement didn't anticipate certain expenses." "You want more money," Thatcher translated flatly. "I prefer to think of it as renegotiating." "How'd arrangement?" Garrison glanced past Thatcher into the house. "Looks like you're celebrating something. Shame to have it interrupted by, say, a visit from the Nakamura family representatives with some awkward questions about historical discrepancies." The threat was unmistakable, igniting a cold fury in Thatcher. "Are you blackmailing me after everything you've done?" "Business, nephew. Just business." Garrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. $1 million, transferred to the usual account, a small price for continued discretion. Before Thatcher could respond, a small voice called from behind him. "Dad, who's at the door?" He turned to find Sloane standing in the hallway, curiosity in her expression as she took in the stranger on their doorstep. "No one important, sweetheart," Thatcher said, struggling to keep his voice even. "Just a business acquaintance who was leaving." But Garrison's attention had fixed on Sloane, his expression changing as he studied her features. "So these are the famous twins," he said, his voice taking on an unsettling tone. "The reason for all this family drama. She has the Harrington look, I'll give you that." Something protective and primal surged through Thatcher. "Sloane, please go help your mother," he said firmly, not taking his eyes off Garrison. To his relief, Sloane obeyed without question, disappearing back toward the kitchen. The moment she was gone, Thatcher stepped onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind him. "You do not speak to my daughter," he said, voice deadly quiet. "You do not look at her. You do not acknowledge her existence." Protective, Garrison observed with false casualness. Understandable, though one wonders what those girls would think if they knew the full truth about their father's family. "Is that your new threat to poison my daughters against me?" Thatcher took a step closer, towering over his uncle. "Let me be absolutely clear, Garrison. Our arrangement is finished. There will be no more money, no more negotiations. If you ever approach my family again, if you so much as send a text message or appear within a mile of our home, I will release everything to the authorities, every document, every transaction record, every offshore account number. You destroy your own company, your grandfather's legacy," Garrison countered, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. "In a heartbeat," Thatcher confirmed without hesitation. "The only legacy I care about now is what I build with Audra and our daughters. And that legacy will never include being intimidated by criminals, even ones who share my blood." Something in Thatcher's unwavering certainty must have convinced Garrison that this was not a bluff. His expression hardened. "You've changed, nephew. Your priorities used to be clearer." "They're clearer than ever now," Thatcher replied. "Goodbye, Garrison. Don't come back." For a tense moment, Garrison seemed poised to argue further. Then, with a final, calculating glance, he turned and walked back toward a waiting taxi. Thatcher remained on the porch until the car disappeared around the corner, his heart rate gradually returning to normal. When he re-entered the house, he found Audra waiting in the hallway, concern etched on her features. "Sloane said there was a man at the door," she said. "Was it?" "Garrison," Thatcher confirmed grimly, hoping to extort more. "Money with threats about the Nakamura situation." Fear flashed across Audra's face. "Is he going to—" "No," Thatcher interrupted with quiet certainty. "He won't bother us again. I made the consequences very clear." "You're sure?" "Completely." Thatcher drew her into a reassuring embrace. "He knows I'd sacrifice everything that once mattered to me to protect what truly matters now." Audra relaxed slightly in his arms, though worry still shadowed her expression. "Should we postpone tomorrow if he's back in the city?" "Absolutely not," Thatcher said firmly. "We're not allowing him to disrupt our lives anymore. Tomorrow is about us. You, me, the girls, the family we're building. Nothing is going to interfere with that." As if on cue, the doorbell rang again. This time, when Thatcher opened it, he found the expected bakery assistant with their celebration cake. "Perfect timing," he said, with genuine warmth, directing the young man toward the kitchen. The mundane interruption seemed to break the tension. Audra managed a small smile. "I suppose you're right. We can't let the past keep intruding on our present." "Exactly." Thatcher's phone buzzed with a text. Checking it, he nodded with satisfaction. "And I've just asked Prescott to arrange additional security for tomorrow. Discreet, but thorough. Garrison won't get within blocks of our celebration." As they returned to their preparations, Thatcher hanging the remaining fairy lights, Audra finalizing the place cards, the twins excitedly inspecting the cake. The shadow cast by Garrison's visit gradually receded. By evening, as they sat together, at dinner, the comfortable family rhythm had fully returned. Yet as Thatcher kissed his daughters goodnight, he couldn't help feeling that Garrison's appearance marked a transition point. For the first time, he had been forced to actively choose between his birth family's legacy and the new family he was building. And the choice had been instantaneous, absolute. Tomorrow, surrounded by friends who had supported them through difficulty, he and Audra would formalize their commitment to each other and to their shared future. It wasn't just a celebration of their reunion, but a declaration that the broken pieces of their past had been reformed into something stronger, more authentic, and infinitely more precious than what had been lost. The morning of the celebration dawned clear and mild autumn sunlight filtering through the changing leaves in their backyard. Inside the brownstone, organized chaos reigned as final preparations came together. "Has anyone seen my blue ribbon?" Maeve called, darting between rooms in her flower girl dress, dark curls already escaping from their careful arrangement. "Check the downstairs bathroom," Audra replied, applying the finishing touches to her makeup in the master bedroom. "I think—" Sloane was using it to practice her bow tying. Thatcher, already dressed in his suit, adjusted his tie in the mirror beside her. In the reflection, their eyes met with shared recognition of the moment's significance. "Nervous?" he asked gently. "A little," Audra admitted. "Not about us. Just about everything going smoothly. After Garrison's visit yesterday." "Security is in place," Thatcher assured her. "Prescott's team has been here since dawn. Nothing will interfere with today." Audra nodded, turning from the mirror to face him directly. In her simple cream dress, with her hair swept up in an elegant twist, she looked both like the young woman he'd fallen in love with a decade ago and completely new, stronger, more certain, carrying the quiet dignity that her challenging years had forged in her. "You look beautiful," Thatcher said softly. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied with a smile, reaching to straighten his already perfect tie in a gesture that felt intimate and domestic. A commotion from downstairs interrupted the moment. Excited voices, the front door opening, and closing, the sound of Gloria's distinctive laugh. "Guests are arriving," Audra said, a hint of nervous excitement in her voice. "Ready to make it official?" Thatcher asked, offering his hand. "More than ready," she confirmed, lacing her fingers. Through his, they descended the stairs together, greeted by the sight of their small but meaningful gathering already filling the living room. Gloria from the community center was arranging final touches on the flowers. Janet, who had handled Thatcher's donation, and now managed the expanded programs, was helping the twins with their flower baskets. Several of Audra's colleagues from her art therapy program chatted with Thatcher's most trusted executives, the ones who had helped navigate the company through its recent restructuring without public scandal. Notably absent were Waverley and Garrison, their empty spaces a deliberate acknowledgement of boundaries still necessary for this new family's well-being. As the group migrated toward the backyard for the ceremony, Thatcher felt a tug on his sleeve. He looked down to find Sloane solemn in her pale blue dress, her expression unusually serious even for her. "Dad, I saw that man again," she said quietly. "The one from yesterday, he's across the street." A chill ran through Thatcher. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" Sloane nodded, her certainty unwavering. "He was watching our house from beside the big tree. He had a folder with him." Thatcher's jaw tightened. Despite his warning, despite the security measures Garrison had returned, and with documentation that suggested he intended to follow through on his threats. "Thank you for telling me," he said, keeping his voice calm. "I need you to go join. Your mom and sister in the backyard now. Okay, I'll handle this." As Sloane obediently headed toward the garden, Thatcher caught Prescott's eye from across the room. The investigator immediately sensed something was wrong, moving smoothly to join him. "Garrison is apparently across the street," Thatcher said under his breath, "with documents." Prescott nodded once. "I'll handle it. You have a ceremony to attend." "No," Thatcher decided, a clarity settling over him. "I need to end this myself once and for all. Keep everyone in the backyard. I'll be quick." Before Prescott could object, Thatcher was moving toward the front door, determination in every step. This would be the final confrontation, the definitive choice between past and future. Outside, he spotted Garrison immediately, standing exactly where Sloane had described, a manila folder tucked under his arm, his expression a mixture of bitterness and calculation. "I told you not to come back," Thatcher said, as he approached, voice level but charged with authority. "I thought you might reconsider given what's at stake," Garrison replied, patting the folder. "The original documentation of the fund diversions with your signature on key transfers. Copies are already prepared for delivery to the Nakamuras if anything happens to me." "So this is your endgame," Thatcher observed with surprising calm. "Mutual assured destruction." "I prefer to think of it as insurance." Garrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've lost everything, Thatcher. My reputation, my position, my lifestyle. What exactly do I have left to lose by bringing you down with me?" The question hung in the air between them, laden with decades of family history and recent betrayal. "That's the difference between us," Thatcher said finally. "I have everything to lose, a woman I love, daughters. I'm only beginning to know a future built on honesty rather than deception." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "But I would sacrifice every bit of it rather than allow you to threaten my family one more day." With deliberate movements, he removed his phone from his pocket, holding it up to show the screen. "This call is to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. One button and everything. Every document Prescott gathered, every transaction record, every offshore account goes directly to them. Harrington International implodes. The Nakamura family files charges. You and my mother face federal prosecution." "You're bluffing," Garrison said, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Try me." Thatcher's finger hovered over the call button. "The ceremony in my backyard is for the family that matters to me now, the one you and my mother tried to destroy. I will burn down everything else to protect them." Something in Thatcher's absolute certainty must have finally penetrated Garrison's calculation. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across his features. "You'd really do it," he said, more statement than question. "You'd destroy your grandfather's legacy to protect my daughters, without hesitation." Thatcher maintained unwavering eye contact. "So this ends now, Garrison. You leave the city today. You never contact me or my family again. The moment I hear so much as a whisper of your name near anyone I care about, every document goes to the authorities." The standoff stretched between them, the weight of the moment palpable. Then, with a gesture of resignation, Garrison extended the folder. "Take it," he said, voice hollow. "The originals and the copies. I'm too old to start over in prison." Thatcher accepted the folder immediately, verifying its contents. The documentation was indeed, as Garrison had claimed, the final missing pieces of the decade-old fraud. "Goodbye, Garrison," he said quietly. "Don't make me regret this, Mercy." Without waiting for a response, Thatcher turned and walked back toward his home, toward the celebration, waiting in the sunlit garden, toward the family that had become his true legacy. He didn't look back to see Garrison's defeated departure his. Focus entirely on the future that awaited him just steps away. In the backyard, the gathered guests had been arranged in their seats, soft music playing as they waited. Audra stood near the flower-decorated arch, concern visible on her face, until she spotted Thatcher returning. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly, as he joined her. "Better than okay," he assured her. "It's over, truly over." Before she could question further, the twins appeared at the garden entrance, ready to begin their procession with flower petals. The moment had arrived, not for looking back but for moving forward together. As the simple ceremony began, Thatcher felt a profound sense of rightness wash over him. Here, surrounded by people who had supported them through extraordinary circumstances, he and Audra would formalize the family that had been fractured by deception and reunited by chance and choice. When it came time for their vows, Thatcher took Audra's hands in his, the words he'd prepared suddenly inadequate for the journey that had brought them to this moment. 10 years ago," he began, instead speaking from his heart, "I thought I'd lost everything when you disappeared. What I couldn't know then was that you carried our future with you, Maeve and Sloane, the daughters I'm only now beginning to know." Emotion tightened his voice as he continued. "The path that brought us back together was painful, complicated by lies and betrayal from those who should have protected us. But standing here today, I can only feel gratitude for the second chance we've been given." Audra's eyes shone with unshed tears as she listened, her hands warm in his. "I promise you now before our daughters and our friends that this new family we've created will be built on truth, on choice, on the courage to face whatever comes together." Thatcher's voice gained strength with each word. "No more secrets, no more lost years. Just the four of us moving forward, creating something stronger and more authentic than what was broken." As Audra began her own vows, equally heartfelt and direct, Thatcher glanced at their daughters standing nearby. Maeve beaming with unrestrained joy, Sloane watching with quiet satisfaction, as if witnessing the proper resolution to a story she had been reading. In this garden with these witnesses, they were redefining family on their own terms. Not as an institution built on appearance and legacy, but as a daily choice to love, to protect, to move forward together through whatever challenges might come. The glass castle of the Harrington name had indeed shattered, but from its fragments they had built something far more valuable, a home where truth was the foundation, where second chances were possible, where the legacy that mattered was measured in moments of connection rather than corporate acquisitions or social standing. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, applause and cheers rising around them, Thatcher knew with absolute certainty that he had finally found his way home. "Mom, Dad, hurry or we'll be late for the ceremony," Maeve called up the stairs, her voice carrying the impatience of an 11-year-old convinced that adults moved at impossibly slow speeds. "Coming, sweetheart," Audra replied, securing a final hairpin in place before turning to Thatcher. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be," he admitted, adjusting his tie one last time. 18 months had passed since their backyard ceremony, 18 months of building their new normal, school routines and family dinners, holiday traditions and ordinary Tuesday evenings. The brownstone had become truly theirs, filled with evidence of their shared life, Sloane's writing awards displayed alongside Maeve's, science fair ribbons, Audra's artwork, hanging beside family photographs, bookcases, overflowing with all their combined interests. Today marked another milestone, the official opening of Recomesos, Audra's community center, for women and children transitioning from homelessness to stability. What had begun as a volunteer position teaching art therapy had evolved into her passion project, eventually supported by a foundation Thatcher had established. "The girls are already in the car," Thatcher noted as they descended the stairs together. "Sloane's practicing her reading for the 15th time," Audra smiled. "She wants it to be perfect." "It will be," Thatcher assured her, just like her mother's speech. Outside, the family piled into their SUV, a practical choice that had replaced Thatcher's luxury sedan, symbolic of how his priorities had shifted. As they drove toward the renovated building that would house Recomesos, conversation flowed easily between them. "Miss Gloria said she's bringing cookies for after the ceremony," Maeve informed them from the back seat. "The chocolate ones with the mint inside. And Janet got the final grant approval yesterday," Audra added. "The childcare program is fully funded for the first 3 years." Thatcher watched her in profile as she spoke, her animation and purpose evident in every gesture. The woman beside him had blossomed in these months of security and support, her innate resilience and creativity, finding new channels now that daily survival was no longer her primary concern. The twins, too, had thrived. Regular meals, stable housing, quality education, and the presence of both parents had allowed their natural gifts to flourish. Maeve's scientific mind was matched by her outgoing personality, while Sloane's literary talents were complemented by a deepening emotional intelligence that sometimes seemed beyond her years. As for Harrington International, it had weathered the restructuring better than expected. With Garrison permanently removed and Waverley limited to a symbolic role, Thatcher had implemented a transparency initiative that had gradually rebuilt trust with partners and employees alike. The company remained successful, though it no longer defined his identity or consumed his focus as it once had. They arrived at Recomesos to find a modest crowd already gathered. The renovated building, once a neglected community space, now featured bright, welcoming interiors, purpose-built classrooms, counseling offices, and a central art studio. Most importantly, it included transitional housing units where women and children could stay while rebuilding their lives. As Audra moved through the crowd greeting supporters and staff members, Thatcher observed with quiet pride. This center embodied their shared values, not just charity, but empowerment, not just assistance, but transformation. "Dad," Sloane appeared at his elbow, her expression serious as always. "Do you think anyone will really care about my poem? It's not as important as Mom's speech." Thatcher crouched to her eye level, a gesture that required more effort as the twins grew taller each month. "Your poem is exactly what this place is about, Sloane. You've put into words what many of these women and children have experienced but can't express themselves." Her solemn expression eased slightly. "Really? Really?" he confirmed. "And you know what else? Years from now, when you're a famous author, people will remember that your first public reading was at the opening of your mother's center." This earned him a small smile before Sloane was called away to prepare for her part in the ceremony. The official opening proceeded with the expected speeches from community officials and major donors, but the heart of the event belonged to Audra. When she stepped to the podium, her confidence and passion were evident to everyone present. "Recomeços means new beginnings in Portuguese," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I chose this name because every woman and child who walks through these doors is seeking exactly that, a fresh start, a second chance, an opportunity to rewrite their story." As she continued outlining the center's programs, Thatcher found himself reflecting on their parallel journeys. Like the women Recomeços would serve, Audra had rebuilt her life from circumstances that would have broken many others. And like those women, she was now using her experience to create something meaningful from her pain. "3 years ago, I was living in an abandoned building with my daughters." Audra's voice softened as she shared her personal story. "We had nothing but each other and a determination to survive one more day. Standing here now in this beautiful space dedicated to helping women facing similar circumstances feels like a miracle." Her gaze found Thatcher and the twins in the audience, a smile illuminating her face. "But the real miracle isn't this building or these programs, important as they are. The real miracle is in second chances, in finding hope when it seems impossible, in families reunited and rebuilt sometimes in ways we never could have imagined." When she concluded her speech to enthusiastic applause, Sloane took her place at the podium, her small frame nearly hidden behind it. Though visibly nervous, her voice rang clear as she began to read her poem titled Glass Houses. The piece, sophisticated beyond her years, spoke of fragile structures built of expectations and appearances, of the courage required to step away from beautiful illusions toward messy, authentic truths. By the final stanza, many in the audience were visibly moved, including Gloria and Janet, who had witnessed the family's journey from its most difficult moments. As the formal ceremony concluded and the reception began, Thatcher found himself approached by an unexpected figure, Waverley Harrington, standing tentatively at the edge of the gathering. In the 18 months since their confrontation, contact with his mother had been minimal and strictly controlled. She had been permitted to send birthday gifts to the twins, which were carefully vetted before being passed along. A supervised visit had occurred at Christmas, brief and somewhat awkward but without incident. Her presence at today's event, however, was unplanned. "Mother," Thatcher acknowledged, his tone carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to see you here." Waverley, looking older than her years despite impeccable styling, clasped her hands nervously before her. "I saw the announcement in the Foundation newsletter. I hope it's all right that I came." Before Thatcher could respond, Audra approached, having noticed the exchange from across the room. To his surprise, she extended a hand to Waverley. "Thank you for coming," Audra said with composed grace. "It means a lot to have family support for this project." The olive branch offered by the woman who had most reason to reject Waverley's presence was not lost on anyone. Waverley accepted the handshake with visible emotion. "The centre is remarkable," she said quietly, "as was your speech. And Sloane's poem. She has extraordinary talent." "Both girls do," Audra agreed. "They're resilient, they've learned to build something beautiful from difficult circumstances." The subtext was clear, and Waverley nodded in acknowledgement. "A valuable lesson, one that took me far too long to understand." From across the room, the twins noticed their grandmother's presence. After a moment's hesitation and a questioning glance at their parents, they approached, Maeve with characteristic directness, Sloane with thoughtful reserve. "Hello, grandmother," Maeve greeted her. "Did you like the ceremony?" "I did," Waverley replied, seeming unsure how to interact with these granddaughters she barely knew. "Your sister's poem was very moving. She's going to be a famous writer someday," Maeve declared with the absolute certainty of a devoted twin. "And I'm going to be a scientist who studies ocean ecosystems." "Both worthy aspirations," Waverley said, a genuine smile softening her features. Sloane, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Mom says everyone deserves a second chance if they're truly sorry for their mistakes." Her perceptive gaze held her grandmother's. "Are you sorry?" The directness of the question created a moment of tense silence. Then, with unexpected humility, Waverley nodded. "Yes, Sloane, I am profoundly sorry. For many things I can't undo, but wish every day that I could." Thatcher watched this exchange with complex emotions. The damage his mother had done could never be fully repaired, the lost years never recovered. Yet the possibility of moving forward, of his daughters knowing a grandmother who had learned from her grievous errors, remained open. "Perhaps," Audra suggested gently, "you'd like to join us for dinner next Sunday, a proper family meal with time to talk." The invitation represented neither full forgiveness nor complete reconciliation, but rather a tentative step toward healing. One made possible only by the security and strength the family had built together. "I would like that very much," Waverley replied, composure momentarily faltering. As the reception continued around them, Thatcher drew Audra aside, finding a quiet moment in the bustle of celebration. "That was unexpected," he said, nodding toward his mother, who was now listening with apparent interest as Maeve explained the centre's art therapy program. "Life is full of unexpected turns," Audra replied, her hand finding his. "Some devastating, some miraculous. We've experienced both." Thatcher gazed at the woman before him, no longer the carefree artist of their youth, nor the struggling mother he'd rediscovered on that rainy Manhattan street, but someone stronger, wiser, yet still capable of compassion that humbled him. "How did I get so lucky to find you twice in one lifetime?" he asked quietly. Audra's smile held both joy and the shadow of remembered pain. "Not luck, choice. We choose each other now with our eyes open. We choose forgiveness when it's warranted, boundaries when they're needed. We choose truth over comfortable illusions." From across the room, Sloane caught their attention, waving them over to where she and Maeve were showing Gloria the new children's library named in her honor. The simple family moment, their daughter's excitement, the community that had supported them, the future taking shape within these walls, crystallized everything they had fought to build. That evening, as they returned home to their brownstone, the twins exhausted but happy from the day's events, Thatcher and Audra stood together on their small back porch. The garden where they had formalized their commitment was now in full bloom, a riot of colors in the early summer twilight. Today felt like a milestone, Audra said, leaning against him as they looked out at the peaceful scene. Not just for the center, but for us, for our family. It was, Thatcher agreed, the beginning of a new chapter. Speaking of new chapters, Audra turned to face him, a hint of nervousness in her expression. There's something I've been waiting to tell you. I wanted to be sure, and then I wanted the right moment. Thatcher felt his heart quicken at her tone. What is it? Audra took his hand and placed it gently on her abdomen, her eyes never leaving his. We're going to have another baby, in December. The news washed over him like a wave, joy and wonder and a fierce protectiveness blending together. Unlike with the twins, whose earliest moments he had missed this child, he would know from the very beginning. Are you happy? Audra asked, watching his expression closely. In answer, Thatcher pulled her into a gentle embrace, his actions speaking what words could not fully express. When he found his voice, it was thick with emotion. Overjoyed, he managed to say. Another chance to get it right from the start. Later, after sharing the news with the twins, Maeve, immediately full of questions about having a brother or sister, Sloane, quietly contemplative about what stories she would tell the baby, the family settled into their evening routine. Homework was completed, dinner dishes cleared, bedtime stories read. As Thatcher kissed each daughter goodnight, he marveled again at how these ordinary moments had become the most extraordinary parts of his life, more meaningful than any business success, more valuable than any financial achievement. In the master bedroom, he found Audra already in bed, her hand resting protectively over the place where their child grew. Joining her, he placed his hand beside hers, a gesture of shared wonder and commitment. I was thinking, Audra said softly in the darkness, about what Sloane said in her poem today, about glass houses and truth. What about it? Thatcher asked, drawing her closer. We've built something different, haven't we? Not a glass house that looks perfect, but shatters under pressure. Something stronger, something real. Thatcher considered this, remembering the fragile castle of his family's legacy, the secrets and deceptions that had ultimately brought it crashing down. In its place, they had constructed something far more valuable, a family built on honesty, on redemption, on the courage to begin again. We have, he agreed, and we'll keep building it day by day, choice by choice. As they drifted towards sleep, the quiet house sheltering all they had created together, Thatcher reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From separation to reunion, from secrets to truth, from broken pieces to something whole and authentic. Their story wasn't perfect. It contained pain and lost mistakes and regrets, but it also held healing and growth, forgiveness and second chances, the messy, beautiful reality of a family finding its way forward together. In the end, that was the legacy worth protecting, not corporate empires or family names, but the love that remained standing when everything else fell away, the love that gave them the courage to begin again, to build something true from the shattered glass of what came before.